much more effectively. So for me, this is a concrete step of doing something that I know will take people who are trapped on our streets and give them a path to health, dignity, and being restored to our community.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Be your own hero.
I never got a college degree. Now I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm 1 in a million, when actually I'm one of millions.
Okay, I would like to call to order the Pierce County Council Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee for March 11th. Time is 9:36. The clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, good morning. Councilmember Yambe.
Here.
Councilmember Herrera.
Excused.
Councilmember Denson.
Excused.
Councilmember Ayala. Here. And Councilmember Morrell.
I'm here.
You have 3 members present.
Okay, and we also join with Councilmember Krueger is joining us. Thank you. Okay, you have the agenda before you. Are there any changes, corrections, questions? If not, the agenda will stand as presented. Approval of the minutes from February 25th, 2025. Are there any questions, corrections? Okay. The minutes of February 25th, 2025 will stand as presented. So that moves us to why we're all here, and that is item number 5, electrification needs and of the future. And I will pass it over to Erica Rhett Hunt to do the introduction.
Thank you so much. I'm Erica Rhett Hunt, council staff, and today we have a special panel for you about electrification needs and availability. So, Jair, if you would please start the PowerPoint. Councilmember Denson is online.
Okay. Let the record show that council member or committee member Denson is online.
So the impetus for this panel was an in-district meeting that Chair Morrell had at the end of 2024, where there was some discussion about, he brought in several Pierce County businesses, and there is some discussion about changing demands for energy and the needs of, and energy needs for economic development and business. So just to give a brief introduction to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the factors affecting electricity demand. Next slide, please. So we know that electricity demand is increasing. So there's growing awareness of things such as climate change, and there's policy goals across levels of government that are shifting to support decarbonization and climate resiliency. And so what this often means is shifting away from fossil fuel sources and towards electrification. So there's been executive orders and policies at the federal level that are moving away from some of this stance, but we still see that legislation in Washington state with changes such as the Climate Commitment Act, which sets emission targets for the state, the Washington Clean Cars 2030, which sets a goal for the transition to electric vehicles. And there's just a growing awareness of how the use of fossil fuels can result in things such as public health issues like increased rates of asthma. So both to support goals for policy goals as well as to meet consumer demand, our building and our transportation systems are demanding more electricity. So building and permitting standards now include requirements that support electrification, such as additional spaces necessary for electric vehicle charging. In some standards, those spaces required for new development can be 30 to 45% of parking. Also, reduced reliance on natural gas as a heat source. So public and private transportation systems are also shifting toward electricity, and that's not just in cars, but I know that the council has had previous conversations about the shift to electric for transit, for aviation, and for our ferry systems. So there's definitely this move towards electrification. Plus, we have growing demand for personal and business uses as the use of computers and electronic devices grow. So we have this increasing demand for data centers, battery charging, and other supports for our computing industry. In an article that we just came across our desk today from Government Technology, a data center can consume 3 to 15 times the power needed for 100,000 homes. That's one data center. And at AI's current rate of growth, it requires the doubling of computing power about every 100 days. So those are some statistics from an article released, yesterday from Government Technology online. The growth of the tech industry has significant electricity needs, but our modern manufacturing and industry also require advanced automation and climate-controlled facilities, which also have high energy needs. So while our use of electricity in our homes to charge our cars, to charge our devices, to move away from natural gas is increasing, our business demands are increasing at work as well. But even if Pierce County expected zero growth, which we know from passing our comprehensive plan, we're expecting about 275,000 more people and 141,000 more jobs by 2044. But even if we expected zero growth, more electricity would be needed to power our lives and our jobs. Next slide. So that's our demand side, but let's think about some of the things that affect supply and distribution, because all of that increased electricity is going to require increased power generation. So as our climate and health goals shift towards more renewable energy sources, we're looking at things such as wind and solar, and we're moving away from fossil fuel generating electricity sources such as coal. In your packet, there were a number of letters, and I think the Building Industry of Washington letter points to the large contribution of natural gas to electricity generation in Pierce County. And that will eventually need to be replaced with zero emission generation. And while those can have benefits for climate and health, we know that that's going to require an enormous effort to build new generation facilities, transmission lines, and other distribution infrastructure, which can be very costly. So this need for new infrastructure can also encounter supply chain issues as there's limited sources of new high-capacity lines and essential equipment such as transformers and substations. There's also, with greater requirements in our building and energy codes, the need for electric vehicle chargers and other essential equipment to build the buildings that we need for our homes and our jobs can delay housing and commercial projects. Our newer federal policies on trades and tariffs, we know, introduce complexity into the global supply chains and can increase the costs of imported materials. And electronic technologies often also include batteries that require critical materials such as copper, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements. These materials are primarily mined outside the United States. They can also have very weak supply chains, particularly in regions where they're mined that have less political stability. So that's an introduction to kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. We have panelists with us today. Unfortunately, Parkland Light and Water, Zeke Swanson from Parkland Light and Water was going to join us this morning, but was unable to do so at the last minute due to a scheduling conflict. We have here with us today Ray Johnson from Tacoma Power and Christine Nahn from Puget Sound Energy. We are We are supposed to be joined by Ken Klotz from OHOP Mutual Light Company. I believe he might be joining us online, so we'll check to see and make sure that he's included in the discussion when he appears online. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that introduction. Very well done, very a lot of information involved in that, because I think this is somewhat of a complex issue that we're dealing with. And I know that just to kind of set the tone of kind of why you're here is because this council, this committee understands what we're forward thinking to. And as a county, we want to make sure that we understand the challenges that you're facing, also in the siting of stations and infrastructure, what you're facing, since we are the permitting organization that has to move projects forward. And then obviously from our constituents, our developers and our builders, what we're hearing. And I appreciate you coming forward and agreeing to be on a panel. It's not quite like the panel down south that you've had to deal with extensively over the last 6-7 years. I think we're a little more friendly, and I just want you to understand that this isn't going to be combative, confrontive, I got you. I just want you to just tell us like it is, and so we understand when we implement policy on energy first, electrification, what we're doing to ourselves. So with that, I don't know if there's...
So both Ms. Nahn and Mr. Johnson have brought an introductory PowerPoint to share with you, and I think Ms. Nahn is up first.
Great, thank you. Christine?
It should turn green. It is now on.
I think it's working now. Members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. My name is Christine Nahn. I am the Local Government Affairs and Public Policy Manager for Puget Sound Energy. And this is just a very brief system update of ours, just to get you familiar with our system and sort of what we do. Next slide, please. So we are Washington State's largest and oldest utility, providing energy services for over 150 years. We're a regulated utility serving over 1.2 million electric customers and over 900,000 natural gas customers. And we also serve 10 counties across Western Washington. Our core mission is to deliver safe, reliable, and affordable energy to our customers under all conditions. PSE is also at the forefront of the clean energy transition, and we are undergoing the most significant transformation in our history as we strive to meet Washington State's clean energy laws. Next slide, please. This is a... Oh. It's 2 ahead. I need the second slide. Sorry. Uh-oh.
That slide's blank.
Is there, number 3's blank? Okay, well, it was a very big graph, and maybe you all have it in your packet, but it's a graph that really shows sort of where we are and where we need to be. It's a good showing of the amount of megawatts we need. So PSC's current owned and contracted generating capacity is around 6,500 megawatts of nameplate capacity. And just to give you all sort of an idea of what a megawatt is, 1 megawatt is enough to power about 400 to 900 homes. PSE needs to meet Washington State's Clean Energy Transformation Act, CETA, requirements for carbon neutral generation, which means we need renewable and non-emitting resources of approximately 6,700 megawatts by 2030. This is more than PSE has acquired in its 150-year history and effectively double PSE's current generating capacity. Meeting 2045 clean energy goals will require approximately 1,500 megawatts of new renewable and non-emitting resources. The transition to cleaner energy means that reliable, dispatchable sources of energy that have traditionally provided baseload power, such as coal, will no longer be available at the end of this year. So that is nearly 750 megawatts of coal-fired generation that will no longer be on our system by the end of 2025. Replacement of these resources with renewable resources requires substantial additional capacity to offset the intermittent nature of these resources. Next slide. So this is a photo of sort of what our modern electricity delivery system looks like. Left to right is our typical flow of energy from generation down to a customer's home or business where they receive energy. Large generation, where everything is made, like a wind or solar farm, takes up a lot of physical space and is typically further away from communities and homes. We have to find a way to provide that energy and bring it to the end user, and that's all possible by our electric grid. So a common analogy to how our system works is very similar to a roadway system. Transmission is similar to our interstate highway system. It moves large capacity, large energy safely and effectively through our system, and a substation on the roadway system acts like a off-ramp, sorry. It allows high capacity energy to off-ramp or step down that energy to distribution voltage, which is then shared and distributed among two communities. And then distribution is really similar to our city roads. It distributes energy to homes and is typically found along roads and neighborhoods. There are poles and wires that are much smaller than our larger infrastructure. We have what you also call, we call this modern because we also have a part of our grid that is self-healing. It's called a self-healing grid that allows our grid to be more reliable through automation, through automatic switching when we experience faults, and the switching quickly isolates the faults to minimize impact to our customers. We are also trying to partner with our customers more in order to optimize our grid use, and that includes demand response programs and energy conservation programs. Demand response is a program that encourages customers to use less electricity during high demand, and we have implemented programs like, I'm sure you all have seen, PSE Flex. It incentivizes customers for using energy at non-peak hours. And typically, before it was generation, transmission, substation, distribution, and then your home. But now, a home has solar, it has an electric car, battery, solar. I mean, there's many things that are now at your home that we are allowing customers, the choice to use how they'd like. Next slide, please. And this is our energy delivery system planning process. This is a look at how we plan our projects and our needs and what our system is going to require when we have a request come in. So our planning always begins with the trigger. You can see on the left side, there are a list of triggers like safety issues, transportation electrification. We even have like business requests, home requests. There is a list of triggers that will cause why we need a project. Asset health, reliability, and integrity look at our current system needs. It's sort of our bread and butter to determine if improvements to existing infrastructure are required. A common trigger these days are larger load requests in an area, such as pushing a substation to be above 75% of its normal life expectancy capacity. Once we identify those needs, we begin planning for a solution. Our solution planning looks at all possibilities and alternatives. It also looks at a way we can collaborate with its customer, so it kind of splits off into our traditional solutions work and then our other solutions work, which is partnering with communities, and that's through programs like demand response. We can use those programs as a way to reduce or eliminate infrastructure improvements in some cases. Once we do a robust analysis of all of our potential solutions identified, we go into our optimized process, which is we look at cost-benefit ratio, risk analysis, making sure that community or businesses' needs are met by that project. And then we go into operational, which is building and constructing that solution. And then the very last step is managing that project and its performance of the solution, making sure that communities or businesses or what the need is met. Next slide. And that is my overview. And I know we have a discussion coming up, and we will share more about what we're working on.
Great. Okay,
Thank you.
Yes.
all right, great. Good morning, members of the council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Ray Johnson. I'm the Deputy General Manager at Tacoma Power, in charge of the power management function. And so what I wanted to do today was I will just briefly share a little bit about Tacoma Power. But then what I wanted to do was run through a number of slides that kind of address a lot of the current trends. And I'm planning to move through it rather quickly. But my hope is that this will provide some helpful context for the balance of the discussion. And so then when I get through that, I'll provide some of my own takes and thoughts on these trends. So with that, let's get into it and go to the first slide. So about Tacoma Power, we're part of TPU here in Tacoma. We serve about we serve the city of Tacoma, 162 roughly residential customers, a little over 19,000 commercial customers, 55% in the city limits of Tacoma, and then 45% outside. We serve JBLM as well. Our power supply is overwhelmingly hydroelectric. We have our own projects here in the western Washington. We also buy a lot of our power supply from the Bonneville Power Administration, which is predominantly hydro. We have, fortunately, a very low, one of the lowest carbon emission factors of any utility in the U.S. So next slide, please. And now I'm going to get into, next slide, please. Thanks. Trends in 2025. So next slide. Okay, first trend. A lot of change to federal policy. Impacts potentially to staffing at Bonneville Power Administration. The current administration wanting to assert more control over heretofore independent agencies like the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Tariffs on Canada. We import a lot of electricity in the Western United States from Canada. Potential changes to grants and supports of supporting of electric vehicles. Potential impacts on manufacturing. So just a lot. The landscape is shifted pretty quickly, and I think that's something that day to day we're following very closely and trying to keep our eye on. So next slide, please. It's getting warmer. Last year was the warmest year in 125,000 years. Next slide, please. Emissions are at an all-time high in 2024 across the globe. Next slide. And what this means for us is that just the weather anomalies that we're having to deal with, which pose reliability challenges for us, are getting the seasons. This slide just shows the length of the heat wave season in the United States. There's just more potential for heat waves. A couple years ago, we almost had a west-wide power emergency in September. It was like that used to never happen. So I mean, it's just like the time space that we need to kind of be on guard for these extreme weather events is getting bigger. Next slide, please. Now switching to on the supply side, what utilities are doing, and so this slide just shows that back in 2022, 2023, there was a lot of gas plants across the United States that are being retired. That trend has started to change. Now utilities are moving towards building more natural gas across the U.S. Next slide, please. In the West, though, kind of the predominant resources are wind, solar, and storage. But there's different trends. Like wind is kind of peaked and appears to be kind of being built less, whereas solar and storage are on an upward trend. And in particularly battery storage, next slide, we're just at the beginning of a massive trend in battery storage. Like California built just massive amounts of batteries in the last couple of years. And this is a projection now from the Western Energy Coordinating Council. And it's just showing that utilities are planning on building a lot more of that. Next slide, please. So as you add a bunch of wind and solar and batteries to the grid, at times there's overproduction, and that has an impact on the wholesale market and supply. And so what this slide is showing is that in California, the number of amount of electricity that actually is curtailed, like they're making more in certain moments than they can use, and they're literally like spilling it. That trend is increasing. So next slide. And one of the ways that utilities across the West are trying to deal with the increased variability on the grid is through enhanced regional coordination. Right now, there's this big shift in how markets, wholesale markets, and utilities trade electricity with each other. It is shifted, and now I would say probably by the 2028 timeframe, you're going to see the entire West shift into what we call an organized market, where it's like more centrally coordinated market structures that achieve more efficiency and are better at dealing with the variability of resources on the grid. So next slide, please. So going to the demand side. So for a lot of years, the utility industry has kind of had very flat growth trajectories. That now is starting to change, and we're getting back to growth trajectories, projected growth trajectories that we saw back in the 80s. And so what this slide shows is West-wide projections year on year. Like the blue line is 22, purple line is 23, green line is 2024. So average use is anticipated to go up pretty rapidly over time, but also the peaks, like the way like when it's really hot out or really cold out, the amount of peak demand is also anticipated to go up a lot. So next slide. A big part of the driver of this is data centers, and so what this slide shows is it's different states, but it illustrates like how much is already there. I mean, for example, in Virginia, over a quarter of the electricity consumed in the state of Virginia is from data centers. And it's, Oregon is over 10%, it's over 11%. Washington is around 6%. So it's already a substantial, factor in load, and it's going to increase over time. Next slide, please. But it's not just AI, it's not just data centers, it's electrification. You're seeing electrification of industry, you're seeing electrification of buildings, a move away from natural gas to heat pumps. On the transportation side, a move away from internal combustion engines to battery electric vehicles, et cetera. So that's also another major driver. And I think, next slide, please. One of the big X factors or uncertainties is that a lot of this load growth is being driven by projected data center load, but it's really uncertain, like if those trajectories, if they're low or they're way too high. I think, if you're following the news, a couple months ago, there was like the stock market kind of took a hit when there was this Chinese AI company called DeepSeek that released their their version of AI. And kind of the bottom line is that they were apparently able to do it with a lot less computing power, and so therefore a lot less electricity demand in order to train and run their models. What this slide is showing, though, is that for AI applications, the majority, they need electricity, they need access to electricity to run their data centers and train their models. But if you just look at, so it's a constraint for them going forward. But on the other hand, once you have it, it's just a small, tiny fraction of the overall cost of training the models. That's what the little blue teal bar at the end. The electricity, like majority of their cost is in R&D, it's in infrastructure, and electricity is just a little part of it. So they are actually very motivated and willing to pay quite a bit to get access to electricity. So next slide, please. What this slide shows is just the amount of interconnection that's queued up, waiting to be connected, and is just waiting to be approved so they can move forward and connect to the grid. And so there's a lag in terms of like utilities being able to bring generation online due to transmission. Next slide, please. There's supply chain challenges. This slide just shows the price of transformers have gone like through the roof. They're difficult to get. It takes forever sometimes to get them, which can delay projects. Next slide, please. We're building less transmission now than so what this slide shows is that from 2017 to 2024, we built about as much transmission as we built in 2013 just alone. So, it's one thing that everybody, generally can agree on is that we need more transmission, and it's just hard to get online. And so next slide, please. So just this slide is showing for the West what's planned to be added 2025 through 2034. So consistent with my previous slides, a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and also a lot of battery storage, and then some natural gas. So that's what's planned to be built. Next slide. Now, West-wide utilities are planning to retire resources at the same time. So retiring a lot of coal, retiring probably some old inefficient natural gas, and potentially nuclear plant as well. So that's what's being retired. And then just a couple more slides here. Next slide, please. So this is looking at 2018 through 2023, what utilities plan to build and what they did actually build. And in 2023, about only half of the new generation resources that were scheduled to be built were actually brought online. So that's a trend. And then going to the last slide here, second to last slide. What this slide shows is a study of what I'll call like at-risk hours, like risks, like increasing risk for blackouts if there's insufficient resources. And so what the bars show is that if utilities are able to build resources as quickly, like kind of consistent with their plans, the at-risk hours through time are going to be fairly reasonably low. But if we fail as an industry to bring resources on in time, through time, the risk of blackouts will increase. So last slide, please. So just my takes. So just to summarize, federal policy is changing quickly and unpredictably. Impacts can be significant. Climate change impacts on electric utilities will continue to intensify. Demand's going to continue to increase from electrification, manufacturing, and data centers. Data center growth intensity is kind of an unknown. We personally are like trying to get a handle on the likelihood of one locating in the Tacoma service territory, so we're looking into that. Utilities are planning to build a lot of new generation, but there is some risk that we may fall short of kind of what we need to build. And then if we obviously can't build enough resources and load demand keeps going up, we're going to start to have increasing challenges with reliability. That in turn drives up what we call capacity prices, the cost for power that you can kind of count on and being there in a cold snap or a heat wave. So that's going to keep going up. But with a bunch of, energy limited resources like wind and solar on the grid, there are going to be moments where the prices are pretty low, like during the spring. And so there's just going to be a lot of variability on the grid. And so, and because of that trend, I think utilities are going to continue transitioning to more of these organized market structures. And then just a couple FYIs. Next, just one last slide here. For more information, I'm very proud of these two deliverables. Tacoma Power just published its 2024 Integrated Resource Plan, which gives you all sorts of information and detail about our resource adequacy position, our plans for maintaining that over time. And then also recently we commissioned a fairly substantial study to look at electrification futures scenarios in our service territory. And so just we have a lot of information out there in the public domain if anybody's interested. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that we have Ken Klotz online. We've had some trouble getting him over to the panel. Is there any way, Jair, that you could?
I keep thinking he needs to accept.
Okay. So, Ken, please accept a panelist invitation if you are online. I think in the meantime, I wanted to, in part of my PowerPoint, I had some quotes there from letters that are within the packet for this committee. And I wanted to make sure that I think these quotes reinforce a lot of the things that our panelists have already discussed. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about those. So, and in the letters, there's lots of great information, and I just pulled out a few key quotes, knowing the subjects that would come up today. So, from the Master Builders Association of Pierce County, they say, the demand for electricity is rising exponentially, yet utility providers are struggling to keep up. The electrical infrastructure built to support traditional 200 amp residential service is now facing the need for 320 amp or greater service in many new homes, along with additional transformers and larger service lines. Dennis Ratty of Tarragon LLC says, large percentages of parking with electric vehicle charging and requiring a majority of the heating cooling to be electric. Due to this, power availability is and will continue to be one of the biggest challenges we face when developing projects. Patrick Hanks of the Building Industry Association of Washington says, both heat pump and EV charging usage tend to fall during peak times in the morning and in the evening when people get ready and return from work. This puts even more pressure on utilities to generate more electricity at peak times as needed. From Travis Hale of the Panattoni Development Company, if your tenant requires additional power needs, such as EV charging stations, EV forklift chargers, EV trucking or machinery for advanced manufacturing, these loads require an additional application, proof of usage, and engineering design costs paid by the developer or tenant. After payment, engineering is quoted to take up to 24 months. The cost can be absorbed, but the timeframes and uncertainty make it very difficult to take risk to pay the cost for an undetermined outcome. And Chris Lyer of Peak 410 says, the ability to secure power transformers and kilowatts from our power provider is essential for landing big manufacturers. The addition of EV chargers, reducing natural gas use for warehouse heat, requiring more power consumption, and the increasing costs for labor and materials have made these buildings non-viable. So I think this points to some of the pressures that people who are working within development, economic development, growth of businesses, supporting the growth of businesses, supporting the growth of homes, some of the challenges that they've faced trying to develop here in Pierce County. And it really speaks to a lot of the challenges that Christine and Ray spoke to in their PowerPoints. So with that, I think we will turn this over to the question and answer period.
Kim was declining at the time.
Okay. He's sending me a message. He says he's having some computer problems and is unable to join at this time. I just received that. So
Not only electrical issues, we're talking broadband issues. So, okay, well, we'll move on and open it up, obviously, by some of those quotes that we have and the letters that we have. You can understand some of the frustration from some of the developers. Also, I've heard it from the multifamily developers too, due to the fact of the requirements on all the new codes, especially with the charging units, converting everything from natural gas to electricity, and then the being able to also with the insulation and the other aspects of the swift changes within codes. One of the things that, of course, developers, some of these projects are multi-years in the making, and predictability is something they depend upon. And when the environment is not predictable, they end up, in some cases, in the one project in Bonnie Lake that I know of was going to cost them an extra $1.3 million in unanticipated code changes and energy upgrades that have to take place. And, you know, that's, we as policymakers kind of, okay, price of doing business. But there again, we need to understand that capital is mobile. Capital can go wherever it wants to go. And, you know, I think the Pacific Northwest is unique. We have, you know, some great environment to work in. Obviously, I choose to live here. But there again, we just have to understand the unintended consequences of what could happen in this. And so with that, I think, you know, we need to go into it eyes open. Also, just want the record to reflect that Committee Member Herrera has been here from almost the beginning, so thank you for joining us. So I will open it up to my committee members if they have any questions of the panel. Committee Member Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. I have several questions, and I think part of this also, my goal is to disseminate as much as possible to what the end user is experiencing. I'm curious, there was mention about us bringing in energy from Canada to supplement some of our work, as well as us being able to reserve energy in our spaces. If you had to translate for us how much energy can be reserved before we bring something in terms of how many homes can be powered or what that looks like, is there an answer to something along those lines, or is there more at play?
Here we go. I mean, typically, you know, the first step is electric utilities. They have to like have adequate resources. You know, that's kind of like foundational. And so, you know, one of the other regional initiatives that I didn't mention in the slides is the Western Resource Adequacy Program. This is where utilities across the West have gotten together. The PSC, Tacoma Power, both parts of this, where they essentially say, like, we commit to having sufficient, you know, real generation capacity transmission in order to meet like our peak load. And then there's a mechanism by which we can kind of share, interregionally. So if it's like really cold up here and it's like moderate down in the desert Southwest, we can share. It increases reliability, and it lowers the cost for everybody, because like if you can kind of pool up the resources, it means you don't have to build as many power plants as you would if you were just on an island by yourself. I mean, so that's kind of the context. I mean, another context is that the Pacific Northwest and Canada tend to export electricity down to California during the summer, and then sometimes we will import, other parts of the year. So in terms of reserving before we have to import from Canada, is that the question?
Or pull from other spaces?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say you tend to line up the resources that you need, and then there's opportunities to optimize those resources. So for example, if a utility has, they have enough generating capacity to meet their load, but it's less costly to import electricity from Canada or somewhere else, they'll turn off that plant and they'll import. That's what these markets kind of help affect. And so it's more along those lines. Like everybody kind of lines up what they need, and then that you might do importing if it makes sense to do so. And so, and that might include, for example, a utility down in the United States having a long-term power purchase agreement with an entity in Canada, if that's like a cost-effective way for them to meet their demand. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm really answering your question the right way, but this is just kind of how I tend to think about it.
Christine, want to?
Yes, so PSC is more unique in a way where we also own our own generation too, and we have a diversified electricity fuel mix. So we have natural gas, we have hydroelectric, we have wind, solar, and we have many other resources. But our mix that includes natural gas is a very important element of how we get there. It's very much a bridge fuel. We have a robust system that is supporting our customers. It's an affordable option, as well as ensuring that it's a very stable system that we also have, while we get our customers to our end goal, which is having more non-emitting resources. So since 2019, we've already procured about 3,800 megawatts of renewable resources, and we're doing more of that now. We are doing everything we can. We're looking at an all strategies, all solutions approach to ensure that we are going to have enough energy for our customers. And so as of last year, we had one of our largest RFPs go out in 2024, which was an all sources RFP, and we are looking at all solutions to bring onto our system and looking to partner really with everybody we possibly can. And that's looking at a variety of technologies.
Thank you.
I have about 4 more, but I'll yield my time if needed.
Okay. Go ahead and ask another one, and then we'll...
Yeah, there was a graph there that showed the downslope of wind energy alongside with an upslope of geothermal. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about wind energy and kind of what those trends have been specific to this area, and what geothermal really looks like.
Yeah, I'm not like the most the foremost expert on this stuff, but my understanding is that the piece this I can say is that one of the things that there's a missing piece I think in the energy transition, which is you kind of need a zero carbon resource that's also reliable, that you can count on it being there all the time to complement the wind and solar, because there's a lot of benefits to wind and solar, but one of the challenges is that sometimes it's just not there, like in a cold snap or a heat wave at certain times. And so as you start to pull back on coal, you need something to replace it. And geothermal, my understanding is they've kind of adopted some of the technological breakthroughs from like directional drilling, like fracking, and are able to like apply that to geothermal. And so there's a lot of now interest in, hey, maybe this could work. Like we could make it more cost effective. The availability would be better. We wouldn't be so dependent on like being in like a very specific. The footprint where you could develop these sort of resources might be better. And I think the excitement is that here's a kind of like what we call base load. Reliable. It's always on, guaranteed. It's zero carbon. So that, but I would put that in the category of an emerging technology. There's a lot of hope, but sometimes these things don't pan out. You get into it, and it just there's details that it just doesn't quite work the way you want it to. I mean, wind has been a go-to resource, and there's been a lot built. I think like the cost trend on solar, it's really been going down, and solar is like very complementary to batteries just because it's pretty predictable. And so I don't know. I can't speak with a lot of confidence as to like why the trend is kind of on the downslope for wind.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any committee member Herrera?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here today. Sorry for coming in late. Hopefully I didn't miss too much where these questions I have might have been answered there. But my questions are kind of on the infrastructure part of it. I think you mentioned on 2023 only 53% of the new generation resources scheduled to come online had actually did. That's a little concerning in some aspects. We know that this has been coming. I guess, I don't know if it's fair or not, but I'd like to compare our future to what Europe is going through right now, because some people would say that Europe is 2 or 3 steps ahead of us when it comes to going to electricity, and we see some of the problems that they are having and facing, which has been amplified by the cutoff of gas due to war and other outside things. So, and they don't have dams, and they don't have other resources that we have that are clean. The question is on the infrastructure part and where you get your electricity, and seeing that these new things not coming online, is that concerning? I mean, you get your power from other sources. I see that Europe has their long-term investment for their transitioning to carbon-free fuel is $3.8 trillion throughout the whole EU, and then another 1.5 trillion on green hydrogen, which is kind of a new thing. Mm-hmm. So, are you concerned at all when it comes to the investment part of available electricity as we're ramping down, as we're closing down coal? There's no replacement. The replacement is unreliable, like you said, when it comes to solar and other things like that. So, more demand, less electricity available. A lot of questions in that. We'll just start with that.
And do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. So, yes, you have concerns. It's the things that I think keep us up at night as well about planning and what we need to do to ensure that our customers have enough energy. So I mentioned that we are sort of looking at the all of the above strategy, which is we are really looking at everything we possibly can to bring onto our system. And it's going to be both. It's going to be infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and it's also going to be, educating our customers so that they can also play a part in how energy is consumed, used, and reserved too, conserved. So we are implementing many programs. I'm sure you all see all the emails from me about all the things that we're doing. But we are seriously looking at bringing more We are calling it BESS. It's battery energy storage systems onto our system. It's a great alternative. They will very much act similar to what a substation would do, is to hold energy and only be used at certain times that are needed. Instead of going out and building a whole new substation, it is far less time to build a battery, and a large-scale battery at that. We're also looking at large-scale and small-scale, so we're looking at smaller assets where we are partnering. We call them distributed energy resources, and we can partner with anybody that has like large rooftop space or a parking lot, and we can use that space, work with them, and allow them to, set up solar battery, and we can have that come onto our grid too. So we're acquiring megawatts that way. Demand response, I talked about that quite a bit, where we are working with our customers on, how we can work with them to ensure that they can play a part in bringing some energy back onto the grid from your home. So we are really ramping up all of our programs. Of course, we are also looking to expand our existing infrastructure, and that's probably looking at a lot of our current substations that we have in Pierce County, especially in Pierce County with all the growth, is adding second transformers, upgrading our substations, because our infrastructure also with extreme weather events, and especially with what we are now looking at very seriously is wildfires and wildfire season, and grid hardening of all of our infrastructure is going to be very, very important to ensure that weather can stand the test of time. And our infrastructure is never meant to last forever, but it is going to all at some point need upgrades to ensure that we can provide that for everybody. So it is, it's really all elements that we're looking at, where we are going to need to, everybody's going to need to be engaged so that we can get there. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the situation you're describing is like what some of the folks in the industry have coined the energy gauntlet, which is that loads or demand is going up, and if we're constraining the sorts of resources that we can use, as we do in like a lot of the western states here, there's a challenge. There's a resource adequacy challenge. Like because there's resources that are out there that could be, they're being worked on that could be that clean firm, that reliable, clean in electric supply, such as small modular nuclear reactors, ultra long duration storage, like iron air batteries, like geothermal, those sorts of things. They're very promising. There's a lot of investment and going on in R&D and that stuff, but it's not ready. We can't just build that right now, but yet loads are going up. And the resources that we do have available to us, wind, solar, and batteries, they have a lot of good benefits and a lot of attributes, but as you're retiring baseload resources, loads are going up, you're still going to have more like reliability challenges. That missing piece is there, and yeah, that is going to have there's major cost implications there. So I think the challenge is like finding that balancing point between reliability and affordability and maintaining environmental quality. And I think it may force us to kind of step back and look at some pragmatic solutions. I think we're all committed to trying to decarbonize, but we're also like very laser focused on reliability. That is and affordability. And so it may be necessary to look, as you said, like as natural gas as a bridge fuel. I mean, a natural gas plant that doesn't run but for a couple hours during a power emergency doesn't actually emit that much carbon dioxide. So I mean, I think we may need to look at those sorts of solutions, just so we don't have. Certainly, we don't want any reliability issues, and certainly we're very sensitive to affordability for our customers, and so it is a huge challenge. And I think we're all working very hard to try to figure out the solutions, but you're hitting on kind of the key challenge I think we're facing.
The other thing I just really quickly want to add is that we are all regulated utilities, but we are not allowed to build or cite anything that we aren't allowed to. So it has to be to the benefit of the customer. It has to be affordable. So that's the other piece, is that we can't just build and expect they will come, sort of a model. We can only build what we are allowed to build through the state. So that's another piece, is it is a goal of ours, and we want to ensure that customers are comfortable with their energy and how affordable it is and how accommodating it can be. But we are not able to build anything we want. So that's just a piece I do want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. It's encouraging to hear that, the reality, boots on the ground. We have, like you said, this state is setting the rules, and the fence posts is where you have to work within. But, we all know where the end goal is going to be as clean as we can. But you talked about some of the bridge fuels while we're getting there. It makes sense in some aspects. I hope that it's not just spoken here, inside here. Hopefully it's down south also as we get to our goals. We just don't want, our customers, they're stressed right now, and we see Europe is 4 times more expensive for electricity than here on the average in some aspects, and that wouldn't be good for economic development as we move forward. One last question, if I may, Chair.
Yes.
Real quick. My question is, when it comes to your capital projects, how do you fund them? Like major ones. Do you put it at bonds out, or is there investors, or is it, I guess, depending what it is?
Yeah, we issue bonds.
You issue bonds. So, okay, that's just what I wanted to know. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say this, is that we're kind of in a fundamentally different position at the moment than Puget Sound Energy. At the moment we have sufficient resources, so we're not building new plant. We're gonna cross over at some point, but I think PSC's out there a little bit in front of us, where we're getting there, but yeah, we're adequate at the moment.
And we have utility rate increases, which is obviously not what anyone wants to see, is that they see an increase in their bill, but they get to see the infrastructure being built, and that there is a reason why we do ask for those increases. Projects are built into their rate, and then we're able to provide our services like our up and go chargers and other programs too. And we have, community solar where customers are able to participate and subscribe. So we have one in Bonnie Lake. So.
One quick thing I forgot to mention. So what I said was not totally true. We've been very active in energy conservation and efficiency. That has been our go-to resource. We've actually conserved enough to be equivalent of a large dam, and so that is those costs are capitalized. So we like that a lot because it keeps the investment here in the community, and so it's kind of a win-win for us, for our customers. So I sometimes I forget to mention that, but that's been the crucial one for us.
Thank you, Chair.
Committee member Ayala.
I'm back. See, thank you, Chair. I'll keep it short. Just out of curiosity, what's the life expectancy of a substation?
I'm more the wholesale, trading person. I'm not exactly sure. So.
I'm not I don't want to misspeak, but it shouldn't be very long is all I can say. We do usually with the substation, we do minor improvements to them. If we need major improvements, that usually has to go through permitting, but they should not last like more than 50, 60 years or anything like that. We should be doing improvements to them much before then. But we can make sure that we get you the right answer from our experts on our team.
And then the other question I had, so part of, for me, the part of economic development is also related to workforce and what workforce needs are required for adequate electrification for our community. Are you able to speak a little bit about what anticipated workforce challenges there might be in the next 3 to 5 years?
I don't know. Do you have a view on that?
I don't I'm thinking, but a transformer is expected to last about 20 to 30 years. So that's that answer.
Okay.
Sorry. I got help there, but.
I don't know. I mean, I understand that there's there are workforce issues. I mean, when you think about it more regionally, like for example, modular nuclear power plants could be like an important part of the solution. That muscle for building nuclear power plants has atrophied, because we haven't done it for so long. So I know that there's workforce issues in some specific sectors. I'm not tracking, again, it's not probably my area of expertise, but locally here, I'm not tracking like a major issue. I could be wrong about that, but sorry, I don't know if I'm doing too good. I think I've got a couple strikes here on your questions.
Thank you.
I don't think that the workforce issues are challenges specific to utilities. I think they're very challenging for everyone. I mean, we work with our trade partners to ensure that we have those relationships on our projects, but it is a little bit of a concern as we have many retiring and moving on, and trying to bring on that next skilled workforce it's important to us, and we need to ensure we do have that skilled workforce for our projects.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you do use subcontractors and other groups out there that supply you with your labor and your utility needs, so you're not sole sourcing everything, I would assume.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the function. I think it's largely, I mean, most of what we do is our own folks, but there's some examples of that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to do a move here, and we have Chris Lear that has been moved over to a panelist. Chris Lear is a developer, and so I just wanted his perspective. Mr. Lear?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Moreno. Thank you, Chair, for inviting me to speak at this. And all you participants, I think this is probably one of the most valuable meetings you can have to prepare for what might be coming in the next 10 years with this shift to America First policy and trying to move away from these factories and all this duty kind of trade war. Setting up these buildings and providing enough manufacturing power is going to be key if the intention is actually to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. And we had a couple manufacturers that were interested in being part of our development, but we couldn't get enough power to them because they wanted 20 megawatts, or it's like crazy amount of power use. But I also did want to I just give you a perspective of an owner developer where it comes to EV charging, because this EV charging thing became a big problem for me being a developer trying to bring our first building online, where we spec'd a 3,000 amp service. We only have about 1,200 amps of use. We should have lots of amperage, but PSE supplied us only, I think, a 950 or 1,200 watt amp, or what's that big box called? A transformer. So our transformer was undersized based on our load, but not based on my actual building service potential. And so when this car requirement kind of came in, I didn't have the power bandwidth required to deliver what my obligation was per the car charging standard. So I don't know if you guys all have electric cars or understand what the impact is of all this, but there's two types of charge. There's three types. There's level 1, which is a 110 plug-in. There's level 2, which is a 240 50 amp breaker. And then there's level 3, which is this kind of mega fast charging thing. And I fell into this rabbit hole because to deliver the 18 car chargers I needed, level 2, it was going to be $80,000. And everybody, I think the intention that people feel is that by passing on this electric car charging mandate to the developer, that the developer will figure out how to charge for it and then make the system work so everybody can have electric car charging at work. And it's just not the case. When it comes down to it, it will take about 12 years for me to pay back that initial investment on these car chargers. And also, nobody uses them. There's four electric cars in my parking lot right now. There's 18 electric car chargers, and nobody's using the car chargers because they all charge at home. And I see that as time goes by, you have multifamily housing. Maybe they'll purchase an electric car and not have a spot to charge it, and so they'll come to work and charge. But even so, right now what's happening is multifamily housing needs to put in electric car charging so that they can supply their users there. So I think the mandate of having these developments like ours, required to put in 1/3 of their parking as electrified. First off, the transformers aren't there to support it. Secondly, it's like $80,000 to put 18 in, and that's running the wire and getting it going, and there's no return on that. So you're basically throwing the money away without ever looking for an opportunity return. But the third thing that is required is level 3 charging. And to put a level 3 charger in a private building like this, there is it's about a $1.5 million investment to put 2 units on site with all the wiring and civils completed. And the payback on that is kind of a challenge, because I don't know if you guys have studied level 3 charging very much, but there's surcharge pricing. So if I have everybody in the neighborhood pulling in here all day long, fueling up like you would at a gas station, you'd think I'm going to be successful. But I set my power price based on what it costs. But then when you get a high volume of power usage, PSE will give a surcharge price. And that surcharge price jumps the cost of the power past what I've paid for, and then I end up losing money. Or what I've charged for, and I end up losing money. So I guess my question about the level 3 charging thing, which I believe is actually the solution for electric vehicles in the state, because nobody wants to plug in for 8 hours at a level 2 and charge the car. They need to plug in for 10 minutes, charge and go. And is there any way that PSE could work on a non-surge pricing to support level 3 charging inside our developments? And that way I could put the money in and I could know my bottom line and I could not lose money when people charge at my facility, is one question. And then the other question is there have you guys looked at this level 2 versus level 3 and perhaps considered changing this whole power guideline so that you stop at the level 2s in the work environment and just push for level 3s and perhaps again offer this credit? Sorry, it's a big rabbit hole for electric car charging, but it's kind of adding to the largest challenge we face at the moment.
Okay.
So.
And I will say that Mr. Lear is an advocate for electric vehicles.
Yes, I have 2 and they're incredible, but I charge them at home and we have no problem ever. So.
Yes, he's the only Cybertruck I know. He uses it for 4-wheeling on his site and towing a trailer.
Well, I have to work, Dave. Councilmember Morrell, I have to work. I got to move this stuff around.
Okay. There was a question in there somewhere. Does Christine, you want to?
The question was about level 3 charging.
Yeah, we're happy to connect with you after this meeting, Chris, and we can talk more about your specific question or your specific issue. We are working with local governments across the board on EV readiness policies, and I know that the state building code council has, if you are not a part of those discussions, I encourage you to talk to the state about this. This is a state-driven policy, and it's not necessarily a PSE policy. We are just the utility provider. But we can definitely chat after this. I'm happy to get you my information, and we can talk with our team about that.
That'd be great. I think the key is, to boil it down, is how can we handle, if I have level 3 chargers, how can I handle the surge pricing issue? And, can we set one price? That's the key. And the second part is, I noticed that PSE is doing a program with Platt to put electric car chargers in houses, so you can get a rebate and all these things. And the intention is to get as many level 2 chargers out there as possible. So why do I need to put 100 of them on my property? So I think that is something that really needs to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it
Thank you,
looks like
Thank you, Chairman.
you'll take it offline and get a response. Mr. Johnson, do you have any comment pertaining to chargers?
I mean, I'm not aware of the building mandates per se. I mean, and I don't know if it would be, I mean, it's something that we developed kind of a specific rate for like commercial level 3 charging a number of years back. And that was kind of designed, we really copied the Pacificor, had a similar, another utility had a similar rate. And the idea there was to try to, because there's a lot of, it puts a lot of like demand when you charge a car on the system, and that kind of causes your demand charge to shoot up, and that could be problematic. So what we did is we started out like basically recovering as much as we could in the energy charge, and then as you go through time, more and more like transitions to the demand charge. The idea was to, like, as that industry matured, try to provide some sort of like shielding from these like big demand charges, but over time that just converges to our standard, general service rate. So we have a small number of customers on that rate, but I'm not sure that it would, necessarily apply if it wasn't separately metered. But.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be separately metered in our instance. Okay. And one other thing, the reason why this is also important is when PSC calculates a car charger, they do it at max power velocity, not at whatever they basically take the load and they do that as if it's being used all day long. And that way it ensures that they have this buffer in case it's being used all day long. And that chews into your transformer allowable usage for the buildings. And so it's a double thing. Like by requiring all this power for electric car chargers, you're reducing the amount of power availability for the buildings. But people aren't actually using the car chargers because the level 2s are non-functional in a daily work environment. And so I've got to reserve all this power in my transformer for these car chargers, but then I'm actually not using that power, but I can't use it for my tenants. So as a developer, there's this kind of like fight between the car chargers, the tenants, and the transformers and available power. So, and it's not going to get easier, and it's not, the only way to solve it is really to put solar on the roof and try to put power in the grid. And I heard you guys mention that earlier, which I've got lots of roofs. You're welcome to have all of it for free. So. Yeah, thanks. So we got a million square feet. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lear. I appreciate that offer.
Thank you, Chairman Morrell.
Okay, bring it back to the committee. Are there any questions? Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. There's so much going on here. It's very difficult to kind of piece out questions, but I was looking at, if I understand the portfolio of PSC for nuclear was like 6% and then less than 1% for PSC. Are there plans for expanding on that? Do you know? I know you said it's not your bailiwick on this, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, regionally there's been a partnership between, I believe, Amazon and Energy Northwest to potentially build a new nuclear project, which that would be, that would be scalable so that if additional utilities wanted to kind of tag on to that and take part of that, they could. But for Tacoma, Tacoma Power, we through Bonneville, we purchase certain, I think like 10% of our power supply is from Columbia Generating Station out in Tri-Cities, and so that's part of our portfolio, but we don't have at the moment a plan to go beyond that.
Because part of my concern with all of this is whether or not it's, no matter how wonderful the electrical concept is, if you can't afford to do it, I think it kind of defeats, it's not the worth of it. Because when I look at power line transmission that is needed, and I see Energy Gateway transmission expansion. There's Gateway Central, West, South, and Hemingway, or west of Hemingway. And I'm like, how will that be paid for? Because that would require, I don't even know if people know about this. I just learned about it a few weeks ago. But the land that it would take to do this, plus now that you have to maintain the vegetation along these lines, and we're talking, thousands of miles of transmission for this versus something nuclear. That's why I wonder, I don't know all the parameters behind it. Something else that concerns me is the demand side management. I believe kind of like the flexibility you were talking about on that. Because that to me says that we don't have the dispatchable power that is sufficient for what we need. And I guess part of my concern is when we're starting to mix our constituents in with the power and the sharing, I mean, how does that work in the long run?
I mean, I just view it's like a power plant. It's like it's the same. I mean, if you have and we're working on demand response, we have a dedicated group that does that, and there's certain measures that are less costly than building a supply side resource, that you get the same like resource adequacy benefit as you would with a supply side resource, and you instead of shipping the money somewhere outside of the community, you get to like actually pay our customers to help provide that service. So but I think the challenge is that there's some number of measures where that value proposition holds together, and there's some where it starts to be too expensive, and so it's probably not viable. So I think the thing that we're trying to investigate now is like, can we prove that certain measures are actually cost effective? If we can, I think we generally like the idea of like keeping the money local, but we're not. It has to pencil out. It has to be cost effective for us to do it. So.
Maybe you can explain. I was reading an article in California where they had too much power and they had to sell it off to, I believe it's Arizona, and Arizona paid less than what it cost Californians. And I'm like, how do you end up with something like that? How do we make sure we avoid any kind of that situation or scenario here in the state where we have to pay someone to take our power because of code?
I mean, yeah. I mean, sometimes we buy power from California a lot. When our system, I like to think of it as a big giant battery, and so during the middle of the day when there's lots of solar on the grid and the price is low, we will try to provide battery-like services to the grid. We'll buy that and store it, and then we'll generate out when the region has less electricity and to try to maintain reliability. So, and then there's certain times of the year, being a hydroelectric resource dominant portfolio, where there's a lot of water moving through the rivers. It's warm, like our loads aren't very high. We're definitely selling surplus to places, and sometimes the prices can get a little depressed when there's a lot on the grid. So.
Well, I remember when the initiative was running probably 15 years ago, and hydropower was not included in the green portfolio back then when that was done. Is that changed now, or is that still? That's
changing. We're transitioning to the Clean Energy Transformation Act, and effectively we get like credit for large hydro. So it's kind of a similar-ish construct, but now we're able to. It's cognizant of the hydro in our portfolio, and we're able to use that for compliance. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those questions. Are there any further questions from any committee members? Not seeing any, I will then ask a few questions.
Okay, great.
So you're not off the hook yet. Looking at, the key challenges with each of your organization, what should the public see as you face these challenges? How much information are you letting out pertaining to why you do what you need to do and how you need to do it? Your communication with your ratepayers, how do you see that changing in this environment?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough one because we understand sort of the environment that everyone is living in right now, which is bills are difficult, and utility bills are just one of those other bills, but we do have we do have programs within that we try to relieve some of those the stressors of a utility bill. So we do have lots of different programs. We have like a bill discount rate. We also are doing our best to bring in more options such as like community solar where you can like subscribe in and those are income eligible, so you can get you can subscribe but get I think up to 2 shares depending on where you are. We have one in Bonnie Lake right now, and we will be launching another one in Puyallup soon in a couple months. But it is really we have to tell the story of these are our needs. We have all is moving towards electrification. We have homes, we have transportation, we have industries, business, but you know, and with EVs and such coming onto our system, we do have an increased need. And we are doing this in a way where we're keeping customers' interests in mind. We are doing it in the most affordable way possible, and really that's bringing on different technologies and that demand side management that is also going to help with that. So we are really looking at everything we possibly can, but it is difficult. We have these challenges, but we want to work with all of our municipalities on how we can achieve those challenges together. We want to be a partner as well to you all to how to get there. So
I mean, I would say for us, I mean, we're actively out at like Tacoma neighborhood councils. We always have someone there if there's questions that you know the public has about what we're up to. I mean, we're always happy to customize content, bring people into those. We run a public process around our integrated resource plan, and you know, I mean, it would be great to have more community involvement and perspective as we go through that process. That's we do that basically every 2 years. We just got done with our 2024, but the next one's coming right up. So, and that really targets all the stuff that we're talking about. And we have some. I'm very proud of the folks we have in that group. They're very like outstanding professionals. They're very thoughtful. They're just could really probably do a lot better job than I can do talking to some of the details. So that's there, and you know, if we could get more involvement there, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have pertains to, we talked about other sources of energy, whether it be wind, solar, hydro, that we have here in the Northwest. Obviously, nuclear has a different meaning here in the Northwest due to some failed projects that we've had. But it seems like the move towards nuclear is gaining ground. Both Amazon and Google power their data centers now with a form of nuclear, which is 24/7 reliable, low cost, no carbon. Is any of both PSC or Tacoma Power looking to invest in any of that type of power sources?
we have invested in small modular nuclear reactor in Tri-Cities. So we have made those investments. We're looking to bring more into our in nuclear along with hydrogen as well. So, but we have already made those investments, and we're looking to do more.
I mean, for us, you know, as I said before, we're kind of in a different situation than Puget Sound Energy at the moment. So at the moment, no, we're not going to. It's not necessary now. We're not going to acquire anything ahead of need. But definitely, when that point comes, maybe in 10 years or so, depending on how factors kind of materialize, we definitely consider it and run it through kind of our standard, you know, economic analysis. And if that's the most cost effective, then that's likely the direction we'd recommend.
Okay. The other question is, we've talked about supply chain issue. Your transformers are they U.S. made or are they foreign made?
So I'm at risk of being way over my ski tips here, but my understanding is yes, some of the key suppliers are from out of they're international. Like there's like I want to say Turkey or something like that, but I'm probably misspeaking. So I guess I'd take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think international like suppliers are kind of a key part of that particular industry. I don't know.
Their transformers are mainly internationally made. And I think right now we had heard that lead time for a transformer is around like 11 months or so. It's much better than it was during COVID, but I mean, we have concerns about the federal tariffs and how that will impact our supply chain issues and our infrastructure needed for our system, and we do have those concerns.
Okay, just wanting to make sure that I understand, because 40, 50 years ago, all those transformers were built nationally. Why the move to push that manufacturing overseas? I'm just kind of curious to see how that happened, but that's an offline. I'm just curious about that because
I could talk to folks
okay
at the shop that specialize in that stuff and get back to you. I don't feel confident that I know enough to give you a good answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we're getting on in time, so I will give the last question and give you the opportunity, obviously, to respond. But how can the county support your organizations to provide safe, cost-effective energy? Are there changes in permitting? Are there changes in zoning? I mean, what can we do here in the near future to assist the utilities?
Yeah, we really appreciate that question. I think it's important. I think you all know the need that we are seeing and the trends that we are also seeing, and we are all on the same page as far as what we need to do and where that is going to be. And Pierce County is a very much a growing county, and it's great. But we just want to make sure that we can accommodate the growth that it's seeing. But we appreciate that question because we always want to be a partner with you all when it comes to these issues. I know I spoke to our permitting team and they said that they have a great relationship with Pierce County, and it is great. I think anything that can be sort of streamlined for utilities. I know you all are working on like very similar things for housing, but if that is the case, I think that it should align with utilities as we are needing to accommodate that growth. But any kind of, ensuring that we are all talking to each other when we need to and early on. We know that we participate in the county's comp plan process. It is very helpful to us, and we appreciate working together on those plans because it's very helpful for us to see also where growth is. But that is really where we need you all. We also need the county support when it comes to projects where we have quite a bit of work coming up to make upgrades to our substations, specifically in Pierce County within the next couple years. But that's all very much routine, where we see that we need capacity increases in those substations and we need to make them. But those all go through, a variety of permitting stages. But we just would appreciate working together and the county support as we sort of embark on this journey. It's going to be a long road. So thank you.
So I guess I would say, I think it would be great if like I mentioned, the integrated resource planning, kind of like outreach process and feedback. I mean, so if there was an opportunity for some participation in that, I think that would help us understand the concerns of the council, and I think it would help the council maybe understand what we're up to and some of the things that are challenges. And so then I think permitting is an issue that there could be some work. And I guess I just would say is, like, I do also appreciate the question, and, you know, it's something that I think I'd like to take back to, you know, executive leadership at my organization, have kind of a more thorough conversation and potentially, you know, be more specific if there's, because obviously I'm not myself aware of everything. So maybe I could just offer that. We could talk about it and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Been waiting for that light to show up.
I told myself today I'm not going to ask any questions about irritating Chair Morrell.
Committee Member Jensen, you're on.
Thank you, Chair Morrell. I appreciate the question about what counties can do, because I always like to get to what are they asking for, what can we do? We don't want to just hear things. We want to make a difference. One of the things that I think counties are pretty good at is talking to our state legislators, and it sounds like a number of the issues, especially the one that Mr. Lear brought up, are maybe things that we want to look into more deeply. I think that probably, well, I'm sure there were good intentions, and there always are good intentions with anything that we do and anything that the state does, but sometimes when it gets implemented on the ground, we find that maybe it's not working exactly the way that we would like to. That what we want is the outcome, right, of reducing our carbon emissions and doing things that are better for our environment, but there may be better ways of doing it than the ways that we have prescribed, or that the state, in the case of Mr. Lear's example, have prescribed. So I was very interested in, I love concrete, specific things that we can do to reduce barriers or make things better for economic development and better for our county. So the example of maybe looking at what's required in regards to level 2 and level 3 in number of spaces, and now that we've actually seen how it works or how it doesn't work in this case. So that's something I think that we can have some more conversations about, and if there's specific things that you all have, maybe they're small things. Sometimes it's these small tweaks that can be made in the state code that can make huge differences. We're seeing that this session with a number of things. So I encourage you all to come to us with specific things that we can do, either us or that we can ask the state to do, and we will advocate on your behalf to do that. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, thanks. I mean, there's, you know, frequently something that we're trying to get changed, or, you know, at the legislature, and so I'll pass that message on to our you know, government relations professionals to see if there's opportunities to team up.
Great.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I think we, you know, as this council moves forward, we definitely want to make sure that we're working collaboratively. I know Tacoma Power has, as Ray indicated, 45% outside of Tacoma. I know you're big in my district, and, you know, I hear from my constituents from time to time. And, of course, PSE, you know, thank you for your communication, Christine. You're quick to send out emails and you know, giving love to Crystal Mountain and my Greenwater people.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your willingness to come forward, have these discussions. Some may be hard, others roll pretty easily, but I think there again, the more awareness that we can have, as Councilmember Denson said, the unintended consequences of actually building something on the ground, even though the intentions were great. As Council Member Herrera said, in my trip to Denmark last year with the port, it was very eye-opening to see how they were trying to move forward with a zero-carbon economy, a zero-carbon infrastructure, but yet it's easy for politicians to lay that type of plan out. It's another thing to actually implement it, and the amount of pushback that was now happening 5 years into their green energy commitment was starting to really hit the both economic, the infrastructures, those who delivered the products, on throwing their hands up and going, we can't get there. We just can't get there. Show me a path that I can get there, and I'll do it, but I can't get there. So there again, I think there will be ebbs and flows that will happen. But that being said, again, I appreciate everyone's time, effort, energy, and thoughts that went into this discussion, this panel discussion. Really want to thank Ms. Erica Rhett Hunt for setting the tempo for it and doing all the background, the work, connecting. I appreciate it. Sometimes I throw ideas out just to see if they'll work, and she's been very gracious on saying, yeah, we can do that. So thank you. With that, we have other business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So under other business, we have item number 6, the child-friendly workplace report, which is part of our 2023-65. Not too sure who's going to. Okay.
So I will speak to that briefly. So as part of the budget proviso, the council asked the Economic Development Department to produce this child-friendly workplace-friendly childcare report. I had all the words just in the wrong order. And they presented that report to us last month in written form. After reviewing that report, we know that that the topic in general and several items in that report are of interest to the full council. And so, although the proviso asked for it to be reviewed by the Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee, I am requesting that we move it to the Monday study session on March 31st, so that the full council can review and discuss the results of that work. It also, some of the results there go across multiple committees, so we see some implications perhaps for this committee or perhaps for Community Development and Environment Committee. So it does, it likely merits a full council consideration.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think the whole council needs to dive into that report. I know it's of interest of a majority of the council on what we can do with child care. So with that, I think bringing it to a study session and let everyone take, ask their questions and dive into that. There again, you should have gotten it by now, and please read it and then be ready for the March 31st.
That's correct.
Okay. Study session. So with that, is there any other business before this committee? Okay, no comments, no questions? Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.